Hello and welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night here. A Friday night. The weekend is here. What could get better? There's even Husker basketball on, and things didn't go well in Mackey Arena for Nebraska. The rematch. The hopefully we were hoping to get that win back. Nebraska they earned against Purdue December 10th in Pinnacle Bank Arena. That was robbed from them in overtime. Unfortunately, the shorthanded Huskers come in and don't get it done tonight. Purdue basically takes care very easily of the Huskers. Final score tonight, 73-55. Little run there at the end of the first half. Really got some separation for Purdue as they led 35-24 at the break. And then they built up a 20-point lead, which Nebraska was trying to cut into here and there. But for the most part, that's kind of what the second half was. And unfortunately, for a game like this, there's not a whole lot to say because you've got if you have the question, well, what if Nebraska's at full strength? Well, we've seen Nebraska at full strength against this Purdue team, and it can turn out well. I'm not going to say it's going to happen every game, but this was just one of those shorthanded games. You guys got their first starts, but Nebraska's just not deep enough to take on a top 5 team, and probably most teams in the Big Ten if they're down a few guys tonight. By the way, those guys were Sam Griesel and Jawan Gary out due to injury. Let's go ahead and bring in the Husker Hall of Famer, longtime NBA vet, and a guy who had a lot better nights, most nights in his Husker career than we saw tonight, Eric Strickland. Again, it's tough to really break this one down play by play. There's not a moment here or there that would have won this thing. But what did you think about Nebraska's performance, given the fact that they were a bit shorthanded tonight?
Well, let me just say that this actually could have been worse than what it was. And so that in that instance, that is one thing that I can say is good about this Husker program is that they at least keep fighting. They didn't give in and they didn't quit. They had a couple of instances where they cut it to 15 and could have got to 13. If they could have got, closer to, 10 or 11, then, maybe some things could have changed a little bit. But every time they got there, it looked as if they were, the lead got pushed back up, big three, big bucket, foul, offensive rebound, stuff like that. So Zach Edey having 7 offensive rebounds is tough. That's one of the things that they have to eliminate. They have to have success there. Didn't get much production out of Keita. Didn't get much production out of Kolinets. Didn't get much production out of Breidenbach. When you have all your bigs other than Derek Walker not really being able to provide you a lot of backup support, especially with the size that this team has, that's going to be tough. But for the most part, this is a tough game. And again, it goes back to this, Bach. It goes back to Nebraska can't score 50 points and expect to win games in the Big Ten. You just can't do it. They had, when you think about it, Bach, you start the second half, you're already down 11. Probably should have been less than double digits, but you're down 11. You start the second half with a 7-0 run. And it's not just the 7-0 run, it's that you don't even get a shot in 3 to 4 of those opportunities because you turn the ball over, just stuff that you can't have when you're on the road. You got to be solid in that aspect. And so those are just things, they're little things. And listen, let's just be real about it. It comes down to this too. You're missing 2 of your starters. That is the bad part of it. The good part of it is that you got to see other guys. You got to, see a little bit more of guys that you probably normally wouldn't see in the way that Fred Hoiberg has been running his rotations. Tamanaga once again does what he did against him in the first game. Had great success. He's one of the only ones that carried some swag out there a little bit other than Derek Walker. Even though Bandamil ended up with 10 points, he wasn't as aggressive as I would have liked it. He shot the ball from 3 a little bit better. So, and then you've got to see just get a peek at what Jamarcus Lawrence could possibly bring to this team. Great defense. Jamarcus is also, it's one of those guys that can actually create space and create his own shot. Other than that, there's a few bright spots here and there, but 0 for 6 for Breidenbach. It's not good in 22 minutes. Multiple fouls, bad fouls. It's just, things like that are just make it tough for them to definitely have any success on the road.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought out Jamarcus Lawrence. I think he is getting better as the season goes on. Kind of played shy, I thought, as a lot of freshmen do early on in the season, and then is starting to kind of carve out a role. And at times, not be afraid to take that shot. He's got a good jump shot on him, so he buried a three coming off the bench last game when Gary came out. This one did not hit his three, but I saw he was ready to shoot and took it and said, if you can give me some space, I'm going to take it. So I think we could see maybe an expanded role from him. His length also obviously very helpful on the defensive end. But tonight it's kind of two-sided here for these guys here. Denham Dawson and Willem Breidenbach getting their first start as a Husker. That's always cool. I mean, it's a goal of a lot of guys as they enter college, obviously. The downside is they're a combined 0 for 9 from the field in combined 47 minutes. So, just kind of going back on your time, when you get that chance, somebody's injured, you get your chance to start, you got to take advantage of it usually. What do you think those guys are kind of feeling about their performance tonight? Probably feeling like they didn't quite take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, what an environment to do it in. I remember when I was a freshman and, we're going up against the ranked Missouri team, and I ended up having 25 points. It's which at that time, before I think Tyronn Lue ended up breaking it. But it's when those opportunities are given to you, you've got to be ready to emerge in the moments. Yeah. It was a game that I think I started, if I remember correctly. I can't remember if I came off the bench or I started, but nonetheless, when the opportunities are there, it's what you're going to do with it, right? You've got to be preparing yourself consistently and constantly in practice, just knowing that the possibility of something of a Juwan Gary situation can happen. I don't even think I even knew what the situation was with Griesel. I was actually surprised that I saw him on the bench. I don't know what happened, but you've got to be ready for those moments because you never know when they're going to present themselves. That's what they always tell us as professionals, as pros. It's not what you or what you're going to do on a given night. It's what you do when the opportunity presents itself, and you've got to be ready for it because you never know when you're going to get another one, right? You never know when you're going to get those type of minutes, and knowing that you're going to get those type of minutes. So you always just prepare your mind, body, and yourself for those situations. Now, listen, Denham Dawson is not the guy that you're going to look at to be the Tamanaga type, right? He's not that kind of guy. He's going to bring you defensive effort. He's going to get after. He's going to give you some spark, help you on the rebounds. He's going to give you athleticism. Had some good opportunities in there in the paint, but just didn't handle it right. The one that I would have liked to see more from is Breidenbach. I think this was a great opportunity for Breidenbach to show and prove himself. He just didn't look like he was up for the moment. And, so I know it's hard when you're going home and you're looking at it, you're looking at the stats, and then you start looking at the film. Those situations are hard, Bach. But it's great learning lessons because the other part of it, you look at their freshmen, right? You look at Lawyer, and then you look at Smith, right? Those guys were unsung heroes. I don't think Smith was even rated. You know what I'm saying? Braden, I don't even think he was rated, and yet he's leading. I think they talked about the fact that there's only 2 other players as freshmen that have had 9 points, I think 5 assists, and only under 2.5 turnovers, and that's Ja Morant. And I think it was what's his name?
It was Lonzo Ball, wasn't it?
Lonzo Ball, Ja Morant, and him. You know what I'm saying? So he's leading a top 5 team in the country and doing a wonderful job at it. And you can see that 4 for 5, great floater, 1 for 2 from 3. Then he had also 5 rebounds, 4 assists. But look at that 4-to-1 ratio. He only had 1 turnover. Yeah. So, and listen, don't get it twisted. Vandermill was hounding him. I'm over there looking at him like, ooh. I wish I would have had an opportunity at this kid, but he handled himself. Like Vandermill put some pressure on him. So I like him. I like this team. I like the way that they're built, and they're built for success. And again, they shut Edey down. I mean, but Lawyer ends up with 27. So I mean, go figure, right?
Yeah.
And it did the same thing in the last game. It was like a mirror image of the last game. The only thing is that Nebraska didn't play as well.
Yeah, Fletcher Lawyer now his 2 career highs are Nebraska and Nebraska. So he beat his previous career high against Nebraska last time out.
Yeah.
Let's pause quick for station identification before we jump back into this conversation.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com. On the internet, KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket.
Yeah, as you were mentioning too, Bryden there, a double-digit scorer of 3 in his last 6 games. Get through his last 7 now, as he wasn't able to get there, but he had been going well, kind of, so far. I do think that it is worth noting again, just kind of like last game. You can kind of say what you want about the final score and not enough help around him, but Derek Walker, that Zach Edey is going to be an All-American, and he might be the player of the year. And it's kind of a mismatch. I mean, it's been done twice now that Derek Walker kind of has his number on the defensive side. Offensively, again, Nebraska's doubling down, making him shoot threes, and they convert him tonight. So he had a little help on that end, but it's awfully impressive to watch Derek Walker, especially after a game against Illinois where he was kind of limited in what he normally does, but to get that groove going back against Edey. And again, it was shut down a little bit in the second half, but if there's a closer game, you think he'd probably be a little bit more involved there in the second half. And man, is it's another him along with Tamanaga, just kind of still great stories in a game that kind of got away from you.
Yeah, and see, Derek Walker is tired. I mean, that's he logged 37 minutes, and then you're banging against the size of Edey for 37 minutes consistently for the most part. Actually, let's just say it was 25 minutes. That's still a lot, right? And you're working out on the other side, and you're handling, and you lead the team in assists. So you're basically doing it all, right?
Yeah.
So that it's tough. But Derek Walker has become a strong force, and he should get recognition in the Big Ten. For definitely Big Ten honors, because that's what he's been. I don't care what the record ends up being at the end of the day, but Derek Walker should deserve some accolades for the work that he's put in this year. There's no question, and it's been consistent.
And speaking of doing it all, he really did tonight. I think he felt like he had to, kind of expand his game a little bit if they were going to keep this one close. So he was trying some different things. He took one ball coast to coast, didn't get the layup, but, you're not going to see that out of Walker too much. And then he said, hey, give me some space, I'll shoot a 3. And he knocked it down, his first 3 that he's had in his career.
Needs to do more of that, Bach. Needs to do more of that. Even if it's at the free throw line, Bach, teams are backing off of you. Even if you knock that down, that's going to expand your opportunities even more. And so I still think he needs to continue to look at that and take advantage of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. I don't know if he's, again, maybe has the green light to do it. Doesn't appear so at this time, but he was reported on that. That's kind of what he was working on in his game in the offseason, and it must just not have got to a point where they're going to allow him to do it too much. But and there's a difference between being able to shoot at the top of the key and be able to do it at the college level, right? I mean, but at some point, in a game like this, he figured, why not? I know I can knock it down, and he did it. And I would like to see it a little bit more too, because I mean, he's got the moves. He's got so many different moves, counter moves. Once he gets to the post, if you got to get up on him there, they're going to be a little bit in trouble. And then, also he's just really good at passing from the top of the key too. Yeah. So I mean, that can really lead to something there. I'm interested to see if that's something they go to if they're shorthanded a little bit more.
Yeah. I would like to see it, because ultimately, if he's going to be a strong pro, whether it be in the NBA or the G League or even European League, that's going to be a thing that he's going to have to expand his game on and have some success at.
Let's go to the Starter Heyman text line, 402-464-5685. Make sure we get your thoughts in here as well. Kevin in Southwest Lincoln, not the biggest fan of Fred Hoiberg, says 4 years of Hoiberg ball, and we're still the Big Ten bottom feeder with no chance of even an NIT invite. The worst thing Bill Moose ever did was fire Tim Miles, who got us to postseason play 3 out of 7 years. Never won less than 12 games in a season. Everyone wanted Frost, so there was not much he could do about that decision. Talking back on Bill Moose. As a basketball guy, when you look at the Tim Miles era, and I know some people like to go back to that, and you think of the good times and makes you all warm and fuzzy, but I think what Hoiberg is going to have, and he's going to be on the, the seat's probably heating up a little bit as the season goes on. And what he can't do is what Tim Miles did several times throughout his tenure, and certainly the last couple of years that kind of buried him, is those 12, 13 game losing streaks. Now, I'm not saying Hoiberg hasn't done that too the first couple of years, so look out for it. But to me, it's just one of those things. I do the same thing in Nebraska football. You can argue about maybe the football team would be better if you would have kept Frank Solich. I think so. Maybe it would be better if you kept Bo Pelini, but at a certain point in time, to me, it's not the firing that's unjustified. It's just that you didn't make the best hire after that. And I'm not saying Hoiberg's not that yet, but as of yet, I don't know if I would say that I think we saw what we needed to from Tim Miles in my mind. Now, I loved him as a coach, and that was something that he said too, is Tim also had a highly entertaining and energetic personality that the fans really liked. PBA always had good crowds those years, not so much anymore. But on a night where there's we can break down a little bit more once we get back into the game, but there's some big picture thoughts there from Kevin in Southwest Lincoln. What are your thoughts, kind of reminiscing back on the Tim Miles era? Do you think it ran its course?
I just began to think that, I know Tim got the most out of what he got. I just don't know if he was able to secure some of the talent. I think some of the disappointment that I had with Tim Miles was I even remember at times when I was really trying to, I think I was coaching at the time, and I was, I had relationships with guys in Texas, and I had relationships with guys across the country, and I was, at sometimes I was mentoring some guys and speaking to families and so forth and so on. I think where Tim lost me is when, he started to lose the state a little bit. And I had 3 of them for him, and I brought them to him specifically. It was, I was very close with the family of Justin Patton. I was mentoring a little bit Kyrie Thomas, and, pretty much, Trayshawn Thurman's dad, we were talking quite a bit, and he said, if you ever in Lincoln, I'd be willing to consider looking at sending my son to you. So we had those situations, man, and those are 3 guys that made impacts at the next level. All of them have played professionally in the NBA and in the G League. And Trayshawn ended up playing for Nevada, which made a run, I think, to the Elite 8. And made a significant impact to them. Justin Patton ends up being one of the better players in the Big East. Ends up being a first-round draft pick, and Kyrie Thomas as well. I told him, Kyrie is not necessarily a great shooter at this time, but I said, Tim, this kid can lock down, defend. He's right here in the state. He can get anywhere he wants to. And I'm sharing all of this. And when he didn't take any interest in him, that kind of lost me. So in those things, that's where I said Tim, kind of lost me a little bit as far as the coaching aspect of it. And then I started seeing the losses. So not only do you lose the in-state kids, you also lost some guys that I thought could have been an impact. And Creighton ends up beating you the brakes off of you every freaking year. And that was what upset me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and Tim Miles had a well-publicized struggle against Greg McDermott up there in Creighton. Finally got the win his final year, but not enough wins after that. And another thing was just kind of player retention there at times. If you could have kept Ed Morrow or Andrew White III, Michael Jacobson, they all kind of left within the same time period. There was more guys to it, but again, I'll always like Tim Miles, the experience, and I think it was a good time. And
yeah. Yeah,
hindsight's 2020. I think he would have probably had a better record than Fred Hoiberg, the last couple of years.
He got the track record. He's got the track record, so you can speculate. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I say about Frank Solich, though. Like Frank Solich would have definitely had a better 20-year run than Nebraska did. But the problem, I think the problem is you find, like with those guys, especially in football. But Tim Miles maybe kind of felt the same way at a certain point. It was just kind of like you kind of felt like you hit your ceiling. And then the other thing with Tim Miles too is his team. I think the tournament team, maybe it's fair because it was just his second year, but probably outperformed, did better than probably the talent they had on the court. And we kind of saw that the next year that the same team minus Ray Gallegos really kind of just fell apart. And that could be due to some of the success they had and listening to the stuff off court and stuff like that. But also, that team wasn't really great till midseason, went on a big run to make the NCAA tournament. But that was just a small stretch run. And then, of course, there was years later, the group with Glenn Watson and James Palmer and Isaac Copeland and Isaiah Roby. And those guys were great. And they probably should have made the tournament that year, lost in the Big Ten tournament to a Michigan team that eventually made the championship game. Nobody knew that Michigan team was that good. And so Nebraska was kind of one of the few teams ever that was like 10-8 in the Big Ten that did not go to the tournament. But maybe should have done that there. But even that team, like the recruiting, what he handed over to Hoiberg was basically just that class. Roby was going to go probably regardless, whoever was coaching Nebraska at the time. And you remember Hoiberg just said, okay, we're not keeping these guys that you have except for Thor. They kept one guy. But I mean, that was it, at the end of that tenure, you had 4 guys and one guy, if one guy got hurt, which Copeland did, it was going to be major trouble because he didn't have much of a bench around him.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Bach. There's really nothing to elaborate more beyond that because you absolutely laid the whole thing out right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to stick to my guns on this. I think it's not over yet. Again, just the blueprint is right there in Rutgers. I mean, obviously, just the injuries right now in that leadership room of the Huskers team with Griesel and Juwan Gary down. You have 2 strong leaders, veteran leaders on that team that are a significant part of the success up to this point. I think it's not over. I think anybody can be clipped in the Big Ten right now. You're seeing right now kind of Wisconsin after an injury, what you just spoke about. Now kind of they've taken a tumble. Rutgers is surprising everybody right now with the successes they have. Illinois is starting to reemerge. Michigan State is probably playing the best basketball right now in the Big Ten. Then, the most consistent is Purdue. And Purdue is doing it with great, youth and some veterans associated with that. And then you also have the best player that allows you to stretch the floor the way that I don't know if they would be the same team without Zach Edey. Zach Edey he commands so much attention that ultimately at the end of the day, that leaves a lot of space and a lot of room for guys to be able to take good shots. Now, the other problem is we've got good shots again. And we did pretty good, I think, as a whole. I just still think they've got to get easier opportunities. Everything that they've done was hard. Just look at how easy it was for Purdue with the shots that they were getting for the most part, outside of some of the turnovers. Great double teams. They did some great things getting hands on balls. Nebraska still did good in that. Nebraska still shot the ball moderately. Okay, pretty good, over 40%. Yeah. You go on the road, you got to be a little bit higher on the road. But from 3, they shot the ball way better than they have in the recent past. But they've got to get easier opportunities, Bach. I'm going to stick to my guns on that. Sutter Heyman text line 402-464-5685. I've been saying it. I haven't been seeing it, but they don't get easy opportunities for the most part. And if they don't win in the points in the paint battle, or they don't win in the fast break points, this team is going to struggle, because if you cannot get into the upper 60s, the Huskers, I'm saying, if they can't get into the upper 60s, 65 and up, they're not going to win, because unless they just have a defensive performance like they had against Iowa, or teams just absolutely stink it up from shooting the ball, then they'll be in games where they'll have a chance to absolutely win. But other than that, in the normal flow of game, if both teams are shooting in the 40s and in the mid 30s and threes, and your rebound numbers are pretty comparable, somebody is going to win out somewhere, and it's usually probably in those little areas, which is free throw shooting or fast break points or points off turnovers. That's what makes the difference. And Nebraska just does not. They don't win in that category. They just don't, and they've got to. If they're going to have success, they've got to. And I'm going to say it again, Bach. They have to. I think for this team to have, for Fred to kind of secure himself and to be able to continue on without people talking about it, calling for his head or saying he's on the hot seat, you got to get out of that play-in area. You've been there for your whole tenure. You've got a pretty good team. I like the way that you're playing. Everybody does. We like the way that you're scrapping, but you got to get out of that play-in. You've got to get out of it. You've got to do whatever you got to do to get out of that play-in game.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And again, if you look at tonight's game, of course, you were talking about the free throws there. Purdue had made 16 to 20. First of all, good shooting from Purdue. But that is 14 more points than Nebraska got from the line. Nebraska just 2 of 3 from the line. Tominaga still perfect on the season with his 2 of 2 performance. But it's hard to even imagine going through a game. And I know you might get less calls on the road, but part of it, like you said, is Nebraska's offense is not one that's necessarily built to get to the free throw line. And they maybe need to attack the bucket more, but they don't necessarily have, the Bryce McGowans or, a Jordan Palmer or James Palmer from a couple years ago that was just great at drawing the foul on the way to the free throw line. You lose a game by 18 and they're plus 14 from the free throw line. That can make a big difference. But another one is, Zach Edey. He's pretty tall, and but it wasn't just Zach Edey. It was that whole Purdue team out-rebounded Nebraska 38-19. That was a problem last year. Often was the rebounding battle, something they addressed this season. Nebraska played plenty of bigs, but just got dominated on the boards tonight. I tell you what, we got another text here that I want to get to, but first, let's go ahead and take a break here. This is the Hoops Postgame Show on 93.7. The Ticket, brought to you by Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical. Also, shout out to Wall Wine and Spirits at North 27th Street. Those are your sponsors for the Hoops Postgame Show. I think because the game wasn't too close, we probably won't have an hour show, but we will do one more segment. We'll do that coming up next year on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Tractor Supply is looking for full-time team members for their Waverly Distribution Center. Tractor Supply has a new progressive pay model where team members receive 5 wage increases in the first 2 years of employment with the ability to earn up to $24 per hour. Applicants can expect a 3- and 4-day work week schedule with additional overtime days with both day and night shift schedules available. At Tractor Supply, they work hard, have fun, and make money. Apply today at tractorsupply.jobs.
Steve's Garage Doors and Services is under new management, but has the same great service as before. If your current garage door seems outdated or isn't working properly, call their new number at 402-480-2840 to schedule service or get a new door ordered. Steve's can repair most types of garage doors and can always point you in the right direction to get the job done. Give Steve's Garage Doors and Services a call today at 402-480-2840. That's 402-480-2840. People first is more than a nice sentiment. At American Senior Benefits, it's the mission. If you're ready for a career where you can truly put your customers' needs ahead of everything else, this is for you. American Senior Benefits is one of the leading senior market insurance product distributors in the country, and they're looking for high-energy applicants with strong communication skills. Enjoy on-the-job training, a fun work environment, and unlimited income potential. Visit ASBMidwest.com to learn more. American Senior Benefits.
Life-changing research doesn't just take place in outer space. It's also happening right here in Nebraska, and you could play a key role. Solarion, one of the world's leading clinical research organizations, needs healthy adults who are 19 years old and older for a research opportunity. If you qualify, you can earn up to $500 a day for time and travel. Overnight stays may be required. To learn more, call Solarion at 866-213-2965 or visit helpresearch.com/500.
Hi, Sean Callahan here of HuskerOnline.com, inviting you to join us here on 93.7 The Ticket every Saturday morning now. In our new time, we're on from 8 to 9 with the weekly Husker Online radio show. We'll give you the latest in recruiting. We'll talk about what's going on with both football, basketball, and we'll probably share a few stories from the inside. It's every Saturday morning right here on 93.7 The Ticket. It's the Husker Online radio show from 8 to 9 a.m.
Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits is now open in Lincoln. Shop our expansive collection of wine, beers, spirits, and cigars at 5040 North 27th Street. From top-shelf liquor to crowd-favorite beer, Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits has a beverage for every taste and every budget. Plus, join our loyalty program to earn rewards and save on future purchases. Shop Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits at 5040 North 27th Street in Lincoln. That's 5040 North 27th Street.
Action Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electric is the call I make when I have a need for plumbing services. Whether it's for my home or office, if I need a repair to a water heater, softener, or even my garbage disposal, I know I can count on Action to help. In one simple call, their amazing customer service team promptly schedules a service call, often getting to my needs within a day. Action delivers honest, quality services we can count on. To learn more, visit actionlincoln.com.
Back to the Tickets Basketball Postgame Show, featuring Derek Pearson and former Husker and 9-year NBA vet, Eric Strickland, on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Hoops Postgame Show here on 93.7 The Ticket. Nebraska traveled to West Lafayette tonight again to try to avenge the loss, the game that was stolen from them at Pinnacle Bank Arena. 65-62 overtime loss December 10th to Purdue, but they were not able to do so. In fact, they came up well short as they were shorthanded tonight. 73-55, a game that was not very close in the second half. So I'm sure some fans tuned out and went their separate way. I will say this: I'm very impressed with Purdue's crowd. They were in the game. They're still getting mad at Casey Tominaga and try to give him the business and make a chance there at the end. Man, would it be cool to have a top 5 team? I'm sure they enjoyed it in West Lafayette, and I hope to see it someday at Pinnacle Bank Arena because that place would just be crazy if it does happen. A few things to kind of get through here. Again, Sam Griesel was out because of a hip flexor strain. Before we get to the Juwan Gary news, ever had a hip flexor strain, Strick?
To a growing more on the inside, hip flexor more on the outside. It makes it tough for you to lift your leg. As you're running, it's like you're running with a dead leg. It's not a fun injury. I just had a strained one. I didn't have anything torn, but yeah, that's not a fun injury. It's one of the hardest ones to heal. You know what I'm saying? Like those growings, it takes time. You know what I mean? You can always restrain it with just a certain type of movement or something like that. So yeah, hopefully you'll be able to recover in a short space of time.
Yeah, and of course, Nebraska's next game, if you're looking down the line, is against Ohio State on the 18th in 5 days. So what is that? Wednesday would be. So we'll see if Sam Griesel can get back. Fred Hoiberg sound post game talking to Husker Radio like he's hopeful for that. Unfortunately, the news for the other starter that was out tonight, Juwan Gary, doesn't sound as good. Hoiberg told the Husker Radio, this according to Robin Washut of Husker Online here, but he tweeted out, Hoiberg tells Husker Radio that Juwan Gary won't be back anytime soon. Hopefully we get him back by the end of the year. That is a big hurt for Nebraska. We talked about earlier, there's some guys, some young guys playing, trying to feel out their game. But as we kind of said throughout the year, it's kind of been the starters, Tominaga and Breidenbach off the bench. And Breidenbach's Sands tonight has kind of been going. So you're kind of running 7 deep there. You'll lose Juwan Gary. That's big. You're down to kind of 6. You're kind of forcing those other guys to play again and play a bigger role and hopefully grow as it goes on. Not that they don't have bodies to do it. It's just they don't have another Juwan Gary. As you look at what they did tonight, they put Breidenbach in. They put Denham Dawson in without Sam Griesel, their point guard. If you're looking at the starting lineup, and more importantly than the starting lineup, just how to adjust with Sam Griesel in the game. Let's say Sam Griesel's back in the mix. How does this Nebraska team look to you without Juwan Gary?
I think it's going to be tough because there's some matchup situations, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that Juwan Gary's able to handle and maintain. But he is a beast rebounder. Like he is a guy that can get extra rebounds. He's a guy that slashes remember those easy opportunities I talk about? Well, when guys start keeping their eye on Derek Walker, or when guys aren't paying attention, Juwan Gary has the ability to slash and cut and get the ball and make plays at the basket, at the rim, or bang on your head. You know what I'm saying? So those are one things that Juwan in their successes and their wins that he's been able to do. Every now and then he has an opportunity. He's capable of knocking down a shot too. So he's a man too. Like he'll be able to put a body on you similar to what Derek Walker can do, hit you with a shoulder and drop you off one. So that's what I like about him. And there's nobody on the team that's like Juwan Gary that has the capabilities of doing what he does for that team.
Yeah, I mean, he's just such a great, kind of player. You don't need to run your offense for him.
You're right.
figures it out and finds a way to help the team. And when he does, Nebraska has been very successful. Again, from a stat from the last game out, Kevin Kugler gave when he was on the calls that Juwan Gary, when he scores double figures, Nebraska's 8-1. Now, include this game, even though he's not in it, but Nebraska, obviously on the reverse side of that, 1-8 as they sit at 9-9 without Juwan Gary scoring double figures. So that kind of tells you the importance that he's going to play. And it's just, you're going to have to find somebody else. And again, like we said, Denham Dawson and Jamarcus Lawrence are kind of carving out their own roles, but they're not guys that at this point in their career, and it's hard to be the type of guy that can just be a stat stuffer without really, again, demanding anything on offense and just kind of getting the cleanup boards. I mean, 2 big putbacks against Purdue last time out, I believe it was. So that's just tough news, but Nebraska, as we know, this is a team that will fight. It's not going to be from a lack of effort. I don't believe that they're going to be able to compete without him. But we've even seen just with him, these games can start to get out of hand a little bit. You can lose a few double-digit games if there, a lot of other things aren't going right for you that night. So I guess, unfortunately, while I don't think it's time to sound the alarms, I do think that there are better possibilities for games to start to slip away from you a little bit more without those extra hustle points and just, that those are the type of plays that, oh man, they really needed that right there. And you're just going to be without that guy now.
Well, there definitely was some rebounds that I think if Juwan Gary was in there, there's possibly a rebound for us because he's that extra big, strong body that when they played them last time, that when Purdue was scrambling for rebounds on the offensive side, they weren't able to get because it was secured by like a Gary or from Derek Walker or somebody like that, right? And then just another body that you're able to put in there that kind of can shore up in that middle. So that's what I was hoping Breidenbach was going to be. But he looked tentative. He looked like he didn't want no parts of contact. He floated away from stuff. I'd heard that he, kind of manned up a little bit, but I haven't been able to see it. I'm hoping that he can get and make a difference and a change. This is an opportunity. Like this is when you start getting like, dang, I'm going to get some more opportunities, some more shots.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to get the ball in the paint. They want me to shoot the 3. I mean, it's just it looked very tentative to me. The only one, like I said, that has swag, a little bit of Lawrence. And that came late. Then you had Derek Walker and Tamanaga, and nobody else looked like they had any confidence or swag in the way that they were playing tonight.
No producer in house, so we'll have to take your calls directly to air. You are live here on the Hoops Postgame Show, the Honda of Lincoln hotline. Thanks for calling in. Who's this?
This is Bruce from Oregon.
Oh, Bruce.
Hey, Strick. What's going on, Bach?
Hey.
What's going on?
And Bach, you guys, the one thing I appreciate about this team, I don't care that we keep losing, is at least they fight. You know what? If anything, these guys are out there hustling. They try their best. Purdue is obviously the 3rd-ranked team, and, they're a great team. Super cat to them and just go on to the next one. And I think you'd understand this. If a guy gets hurt, you move on to somebody else, next man up. And this just gives somebody else an opportunity. So I hope that we can, get out of this funk. But I'm proud of these guys. That's what I care about as a fan. Obviously, I'd like to win, but okay, we didn't. But I'm proud that I can say my team goes out and fights every night, even if we lose. So thanks, guys. Bach, you guys have a great one.
Thank you.
For calling in and chiming in. I think generally that's the feeling from most Husker fans is
I agree.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Bach. Finish. I just wanted to let you know I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's again the difference between this Hoiberg team and some of the others of the past is you can see the effort out there. You can see the fight to the end. And it's at least endearing in that way. But I will say that, and as much as that can be nice, you've got to keep the attention of the Nebraska fans, and you start to lose too many games, and that will start to subside, especially again if they start to become double-digit losses. I don't say all that with a grain of salt here, because I mean, what can you say? You're down 2 starters against a top 5 team at their home court, while their coach, by the way, is going for his 400th victory. I mean, a milestone victory. So this was just going to be a tough one to win. Nebraska hung around for a little bit. About 10 minutes, 5 minutes ago, the first half, you felt like, okay, they're just kind of keeping it within 10. If they can stay there, who knows what can happen in the end. But I'm just a little bit worried because the losses have started to become double-digit losses. I believe their last 4 now, other than, if you go back 5 losses, that would be Purdue. Kansas State, a heck of a team. We didn't know that as much at the time, but you lost by 15 there, 18 points to the Michigan State on the road. Illinois, of course, you lost to 26 by at home, and now 18 to Purdue. And it's the schedule's not going to get too much easier now. You have Ohio State, who's kind of reeling, even lost to Minnesota just last night. Penn State team, who's looking not too bad this year, in Northwestern are your next 3 games, and Northwestern the same way. Penn State and Northwestern are usually the games you go back to and say, well, at least you got a chance to kind of take care of the bottom of the league. But it's not so apparent that those are the teams this year. So it's going to be a difficult stretch, and I just think. I think this is, again, the type of team, and DP's kind of said it, if their field goals aren't falling, and, they have to have a few things go right for them, then it can kind of be a team that's going to start to give up double-digit losses here and there. And I just can't add up too much. I think the frustration and the attention span of Husker fans will start to stray elsewhere, as it might have already tonight. I saw somebody on the text line are trying to bring up the Raiolas. The football team's coaching staff salaries were announced, so that's all interesting. Nebraska's now got $1 million offensive coordinator and 1.4 for what that's worth, and $1 million defensive coordinator. So welcome to the club for that for Nebraska. I don't know if those coordinators are completely worth the money, but one way or the other, usually, and once you go there, you're not going to go back. And the SEC has been paying their coordinators, a lot of those teams, for years, more than $1 million. So I think that's good for Nebraska's program overall. But anyways, just, the point is there's going to be some distractions. There's going to be other things to do if this team starts to fall too far behind 500. And that's kind of where they're at. Usually get that buffer zone that they had from non-con play. Played a tougher non-con, so wasn't able to really build up too much of a lead there. But now Nebraska sitting at 9-9 and 2-5 in conference play. You just don't want to fall too far behind 500. And Ohio State, again, a team I think that's lost 4 in a row. I have to go double check, but I know they've lost that last one to Minnesota there. And by the way, I don't know if you're able to watch that. They had FS1 had a coaches. Basically, you could be in the coaches huddle the whole time and hearing from the coaches during that Minnesota Ohio State game. Really intriguing, really cool to kind of watch there. Of course, Ben Johnson, the former Tim Miles assistant at Nebraska, was kind of glued to that. So that was kind of fun to watch. But either way, Ohio State, it's a tough group to beat, especially if Nebraska's going to be shorthanded. And but they almost you hate to say any game midseason in a Big Ten game is must win, but you're starting to fall a little bit too far behind the 500 mark in the Big Ten, and that's kind of got to be your goal.
Yeah, Bach. You don't want to get too far in the Big Ten. You don't want to lose too much because it then puts too much pressure on you to try to do things. I still think you got to take care of your home. You come home and you've got to handle business. You got to try to do all that you can to keep your record at a high level at home. Yes, you may lose against some of the top tier teams at home potentially, but you definitely want to give them a run for their money. And then you just go out there. I didn't expect them to go out there, especially with Gary out. I didn't expect them to go out there and win. I expect them to do what they did, and that was to compete. They competed. That was my expectation for the night. You have to have some things go. You have to also play. You have to pretty much play a flawless game in order to win this game, especially when you're shorthanded. This team is where they're supposed to be for a reason. And again, where they took their L was on the road against a similar style, a way of playing, muddy it up, rough it up a little bit, battle, scrap, get hands. You're all over the place. Rutgers, similar blueprint that Nebraska has, and Nebraska almost clipped them at home too. So they got to handle business at home. They've got to handle business at home, and then you got to go on the road, and you've got to try to, like you said, Northwestern ain't no punk. It used to be like Northwestern was one. They ain't no punk. Penn State ain't no punk. It's a lot of parity in the Big Ten. That's why at any given night, you just can't just show up and think you're gonna just get a W. Every team is going to fight for you. And then now Iowa's starting to play a little bit better now. So it's like, these standings still can change a little bit. There's still some time for it to happen, and you just don't want to be the one that goes on a free fall when it all comes down, when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly. I mean, this is the type of year where 500 and Big Ten play, if you're kind of in that area near the end, you could really, if Nebraska's got 3 out of 4 home games to finish off the stretch. If they can get into that stretch near 500, they could really, bolster their situation by the end of the year. But it's going to take a lot of work to do that. By the way, Indiana, who Nebraska opened
started out.
Yeah, we thought that was one of the best teams in the league. They're 1-4 in the Big Ten. They're tied with Minnesota for last. That's how difficult. Trace Jackson. That's a good team.
Yeah, check this out, Bach. I actually looked at it, and this is what kind of intrigued me. Michigan State took advantage of a 5-game. It was like a 5-game home stretch that they had, where they were struggling, and they took advantage of that 5-game home stretch. They won all of them, and then now they're one of the hottest teams out there. That's what you just said. They've got to take advantage of this 3-game, homestand that they're going to have. They've got to take advantage of it. If they don't, if they fall to 2 and 3, 2 of the 3, if they lose 2 of the 3, that's going to be trouble for them, because now you're going to hit the road, and there's no easy pickings on the road.
And Ohio State, I misspoke earlier. They've only lost 3 in a row, not 4 in a row. They have Rutgers on Sunday at Rutgers, so it could be 4 in a row by the time.
Could be 4 in a row by the time that Rutgers, I think, is like they've only lost like 1 game at home or something. I can't remember. I saw it earlier.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But they lost. They started that losing streak with a 2-point loss to this Purdue team. So it's not a bad team. Obviously, also losses early in the year did like Duke, San Diego State, was ranked at the time, I think still is. So pretty darn good competition that they've played so far. North Carolina, a team that went to the national championship game. Ohio State is very battle tested, and with Nebraska, a heck of a matchup as well. Strick, a few questions before we get out of here that people are kind of wondering about. Where was it? Let's see. The guys were texting a little bit more here. Let's see. I know the question was based. I can't find it exactly, but the question had to do with CJ Wilcher. CJ tonight didn't even. I kind of disappeared in the second half. To be honest with you, I didn't see him.
Are you talking about? Are you talking about the question from Brad where he says Nebraska so beat down in sports fans don't even care if they win, just try. I don't know if I have that feeling about it, but I'm speaking tonight. If that's what you heard me say, or if you heard me kind of allude to that, or if you're talking about the caller, I just said tonight against the top tier, top 10, top 5 team without 2 starters, I didn't have an expectation for them to have a whole lot of success, especially when you're already struggling to score points and you're losing 2 of your double-digit guys. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so I speak from that, but I can understand what you're saying. You're absolutely right. It's kind of the expectations are no longer the way that they used to be in the past. So that's that, Brad. Scott, what do you think about the Huskers in the NBA? I'm proud of them. I think they're making strides. I think I was surprised to see not Trey, but Bryce. I was surprised to see Bryce emerge as quickly as I did. So I'm happy for him. Trey's actually not having a bad stint in the G League right now. So that's the situation there. And Isaiah Roby, he was at Oklahoma, but I think he got traded. I can't remember where he got sent to.
Yeah, I think he's with the Spurs now.
He's with the who?
The Spurs.
Spurs.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to see much of them. Obviously, they're shooting for the Wembanyama sweepstakes, so that's the case for that. I don't even know if they're trying to win games at this point. So we'll see.
Yeah, and then Delano Banton, of course, another former Husker.
Oh yeah, in Toronto. Yeah, I like Banton. I think he brings a unique, way of playing the game. I still think he's got to continue to stroke that ball. I think he still struggles there with consistency and deep, but he's got to continue to work on that.
But yeah, the one question I guess that I found it now was Frederick Frank was saying he was asking about what's wrong with Wilcher. He shot the ball much better last year. He's saying that at this point, Tominaga and Lawrence should get a lot more time than Wilcher, and kind of threw out his statistics right now. And like saying, I think it even kind of started to play into Wilcher's minutes tonight. I have to double check, but I think that he only had 20 minutes.
20.
Yeah, lowest among the starters. And of course, a shorthanded night that was lower actually than Lawrence, lower than Tominaga, less minutes than those guys. And I don't know if there was an injury or anything. Hopefully not. I mean, Tominaga was dinged up a little bit. Nebraska really can't afford any more injuries, but
he can't create his own shot. He can't create his own shot. And the problem, that's what I'm talking about, Bach. The problem with the Huskers is they don't have nobody that can create it for him. See, back then, when he did have the success he had, you kind of had to keep your eyes on Verge, because Verge can get there. He can get there. He can beat you off the dribble. He can create space. He makes guys have to converge to the paint, which left opportunities for CJ Wilcher. That's where success comes. CJ gets a good look. He can, but guys know that there's no one that can do that. And then you also have Bryce. Bryce can square you up on the outside, beat you and bang on you, or get to a mid-range, or create an opportunity. You had to kind of flood into the paint. So they don't have nobody that can do that right now. Outside, I think Tominaga has the ability to do it. I just don't think they give him an opportunity to do it as much as he probably can. I think he has the ability to create space like that.
Yeah, I do. I think that's going to be another storyline just to watch develop, because I know he has some, he has some shots that you'd probably rather not like as a coach at times, make some decisions, but you saw him a little bit with his craftiness again tonight.
Yeah.
Nice little scoop layup. Should have had an assist to Koyanets if he was ready. Koyanets kind of got his first significant action of the season because they were shorthanded. Blaze Keita really struggling again as he kind of comes back off that injury. So we'll see if we can get out of him. But to at least to support Will from here, like you said, his shooting percentage from beyond the arc entering today's game was 32%. He was around 40% last year, and part of it's just not getting a whole lot of clean looks and being very well scouted. To his credit, though, he has doubled his assist ratio. He's averaging 1.6 per game going into tonight's game. I don't believe he had one tonight, so that's down a bit. But I think that, along with him averaging a point more per game as well.
Well, Bach, that's what I'm telling you when you look at the box score, right? The box score tells you everything that I'm saying is correct. They have nobody that can create space, not only for themselves, but for others, because look at the assist numbers. The assist numbers speak to that. Yeah. Now, where Griesel has success is because he has size advantage, and you have to kind of double him when he puts you in the post, or you have to make a decision as whether or not you're going to let him work you out. Same thing that's why Derek Walker because Derek Walker has the capability of creating space against bigs and working them out, and you have to kind of flood the paint, which opens up opportunities. Plus, he passes well off your cuts, and you your rubs off of him, you get some open opportunities. So yeah, man, that's what shows and sells the whole thing about what I'm saying is that, you don't have guys that can do that.
Yeah, and you see it again, too, in the low assist numbers for Nebraska tonight. Just 9 of them. Purdue only had 12 for what it's worth. But again, to what your point earlier about this could have been a lot worse. Nebraska only 10 turnovers. And without a true point guard, that's not too bad for playing the number 5 team in the nation, or number 3 team in the nation, I should say. And leads to the point that it could have been a lot worse. Let's go to closing thoughts here, as we actually have been able to stretch this show for about an hour. I was wondering if we were going to have too much to talk about. So thank you to everybody out there that's given us a few extra things to spin around here. And ultimately a game that, again, probably didn't have too much to break down. If you watched it or if you look at the box score, you get about the idea of what it was. But any thoughts moving forward without Juwan Gary particularly?
Well, I think I've pretty much spoken about them. I think you have to go back home and figure out what your new rotations are going to look like. Maybe if you're going to, bring CJ Wilcher off the bench, maybe see if you throw Jamarcus Russell in there, make him get a little bit more comfort knowing that he's going to get there's some comfort in knowing that you're probably, based on where you're either starting or whatever, you're probably going to get a certain amount of minutes if you're able to show or bring some form of production in some area to the game. So I don't know, but they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and figure that out in this next stretch.
Yeah, we'll see if Nebraska can get it done. That'll wrap it up for the Hoops post-game show tonight. Thanks to you out there, to the listener. Thank you, Derek Strickland, for staying up with us and getting this done. Once again, Nebraska will take on Ohio State, and they'll do so with 500 hanging the balance as they are 9-9. So that'll be a big game on Wednesday. We'll be back with the Hoops post-game show for that. But that'll close it out for the night. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you Monday.
Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits is now open in Lincoln. Shop our